are fighting, both armed with nuclear weapons. Hopefully, they will not have to deploy any such weapons of mass destruction, and maybe it will be over in a short period of time. They've been fighting since 1947 and before that. And what we're seeing is fighting still going on in Yemen. The United States apparently has persuaded the Houthis to stop firing on American ships that are going through the Red Sea and other places, but they're still firing at Israeli targets, and Israel has the right to fire back. The Houthis have threatened to end all air traffic to Israel by targeting Ben Gurion Airport, which is a civilian airport, targeting civilians, hoping to kill 3, 5, 700 people on airplanes that are flying in. And it's caused several airlines to cancel their flights to Israel for fear that maybe a rocket will get through. So Israel has the right to destroy the Houthis' capacity to fire any rockets into Israel. In the meantime, there's another slight war going on, not a lethal one, but at Columbia University, where a group of people who call themselves pro-Palestinian, they wouldn't even recognize where Palestine was. Most of them, they have nothing to do with Palestine. They don't care about Palestinians. They only hate Jews, and they hate America, and they hate Christians. And, you know, the best proof of that has anybody ever seen a single anti-Israel demonstration, a single one that calls for a two-state solution? I haven't, and I've been following this for a long time. I challenge anyone since October 7th, when Hamas killed 1,200 innocent Israelis and kidnapped 250 of them. I challenge anyone to find me a single protester, a single protester who has called for a two-state solution. They don't want a Palestinian state. They don't care about the Palestinians. They only don't want there to be a Jewish state. And if they had their way, they don't want there to be Jews. And so Columbia University has broken its promise to the federal government. The federal government has made them promise that they would not allow students to wear masks and just turn on the television after the show is over. No, while the show is on. But you'll see, or go online and you'll see, that these anti-Israel agitators, anti-American agitators, are wearing masks. They're in violation of the rules of Columbia. Let's see if they're disciplined. How do you discipline somebody who's wearing a mask? Unless you compel them to remove the mask. And I would like to see Columbia and other schools pass rules giving the police the authority to pull the masks off people and make them identify themselves and photograph them and make them show ID. And let's see how tough Columbia gets. And if it does get tough, it will be only because the Trump administration has threatened to cut off federal funding. First of all, the federal government ought to give no funding whatsoever to Barnard. Barnard's not a real college. It's a fake school. Barnard used to be a college, but now it's just a place where women live in a dorm and join radical organizations. If they want to take real courses, just walk across the street and take classes at Columbia. Find me a real course that's taught in Barnard today. I looked through the catalog at one point. I couldn't find a real course. So if Barnard goes under and is abolished, along with Radcliffe, which used to be part of Harvard, now just exists as an institute. If Barnard goes under, you will see no tears shed by me. It deserves not to be part of a university. All it has is these radical woke programs. So I'm not a fan of Barnard. I'm not a fan of the Ivy League universities. I have to tell you, they become places of real mediocrity. I'm writing a book on the subject now, Defund or Defend, who will win Trump's war against the Ivies. And I think probably neither will win. Probably there'll be some split decisions. Both sides will suffer defeats, and the losers will be the American public, who depend on universities for a lot of research and other kinds of things. So I'm hoping if there is defunding, it will be targeted defunding, which doesn't affect cancer research and other important scientific research that's being done under university auspices. Well, speaking of October 7th, I had the distinct honor today of meeting with several of the families of people who are still being held hostage in Gaza, including the parents of the American that's being held hostage. These are wonderful, incredible, strong people who are terrified. Their children are being held without food, without medical care, uh, in tunnels, without sanitation. Many of them have already died from being held captive. The Hamas says, "Oh, they were killed by Israelis." Nonsense. That's just total nonsense. Some of them were executed. We know one, an American, and four other people just put a gun to his head and executed them. Hamas did that. We know that. Others have been killed. Others have been raped and sexually molested. But when you see these Columbia protests, do you ever see a word about the hostages? Have you ever seen a single one of the protesters calling for a return to the hostages? No. These are not pro people. These are not pro Palestine. They're not pro hostages. They're not pro peace. They are vicious, anti American, anti Christian, anti Semitic radicals who would love to see an end to American hegemony and American, imperialism and colonialism. They're living in the 19th century or the 18th century. They call themselves progressives, they're regressives. They call themselves woke, they're asleep. And they're terrible, terrible people, and I know because I know some of them, and there's no excuse for these people disrupting classes. Now they're disrupting studying for exams. So I met with these wonderful people today. There were about 10 of them, and I was there with one of the people. I'm not going to mention who it was, but I was there with one of the main negotiators who's trying to negotiate their freedom. Somebody who's working with the Trump administration. I guess it's been in the paper that I've been with them, so I could mention. It's Steve Wyckoff, who is America's chief negotiator with both Ukraine and Iran and Hamas, and he was at this meeting today with me and the hostage families. He was at the meeting with the hostage families. Then he invited me to join. I did join. Then I had some time alone with him, talking about the future of Gaza, the future of what will happen after Hamas is defeated. Wyckoff is a brilliant, brilliant guy and the right man for the job. People would always ask me to recommend lawyers, and I would always have one word of advice. If you have two choices, one of them is very experienced. He's done 1,000 cases, knows everything about the law, about this subject, but he's not very bright. And the other guy really doesn't know very much about this legal issue, but he's brilliant. Who are you going to hire? And my recommendation is hire the brilliant guy. The lawyers are quick learners. And the other people, the people who have been doing this for 100 years, are going to do it for 101 years. They're going to do it the same way. And I feel the same way about Wyckoff. He didn't come to this job with an enormous amount of experience in the State Department or other parts of government, but he is a brilliant negotiator, somebody who's worked in the business world very successfully for many years, and he's a quick learner. And we talked about what's going on, and we talked about the negotiations, and we talked about his upcoming trip to the Middle East. I wasn't going to disclose the meeting at all, but the Wall Street Journal called me and said, "We hear you had a meeting with," and they had all the facts right. So I don't know who disclosed it, but it may have been somebody we met over breakfast at a hotel dining room in New York. So it may have been somebody who saw us and notified the Wall Street Journal, or maybe it was the administration. I don't know, but I felt free to disclose what otherwise I would not have disclosed. When people have meetings with me, I keep that confidential unless it's already been disclosed. But this has already been disclosed, so I don't feel any compunction. I'm not going to disclose what went on at the meeting and what the plans for the future were. If you want to hear what the plans are, just go on Signal. No, I'm joking. but that's been the major source of, if you want to find secret information, join the Atlantic, or become a journalist and go on Signal, and you'll find out what's happening. No, I think what's going to go on in the next couple of weeks in the Middle East can be very significant. You saw that President Trump announced yesterday, in his typical style, there's going to be a big announcement, the biggest announcement ever. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you about trade. He really has the amazing ability to keep people on the edge of their seats. The Prime Minister of Canada said specifically, I'm at the edge of my seat. What are you going to do? I didn't learn anything in the meeting today. And if I did, I couldn't tell you. But I didn't learn anything today about what the announcement is going to be. I speculated yesterday that maybe it's not about the Middle East. The reason I speculated maybe it wasn't about the Middle East is because we learned yesterday a fact that was concerning and surprising, namely when President Trump announced that he had gotten the Houthis to capitulate and to stop firing on American ships. He didn't negotiate. He didn't even notify the Israelis that he was doing it. Netanyahu apparently heard about this the same time the rest of us did on television. And so if President Trump isn't cooperating with Netanyahu on the Houthis, I doubt that he is planning some big event involving the Middle East without any planning and cooperation with the Israelis. Certainly, he's not going to have a Gaza ceasefire without the Israelis being involved, or an end of the fighting in other parts of the Middle East. So my own suspicion is that the big announcement may involve something else. Maybe it'll involve trade. Maybe it'll involve, I don't think it'll involve Iran, because if it were to involve Iran, obviously the Israelis have to be on board. And if the Israelis haven't been even notified about the Houthis, who are the Iranians, let's remember who the Houthis are. They are the Ayatollahs, just with a different ethnicity and a different location. But nothing the Houthis do is done without the cooperation and agreement of Iran. So when the Houthis made a deal with the United States in the last day, obviously it was a deal with Iran. So we'll see whether or not there's any movement toward a solution of Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons. Let's be very clear. Iran wants to get nuclear weapons. It's in the process of getting them. It's very close to developing enough material to produce 3 or 4 bombs within the next a few months. And as they've said, Israel's a one-bomb state. If you manage to get one bomb through the way the Houthis got a bomb through to Ben Gurion Airport, if you were able to get one bomb, one nuclear bomb into Tel Aviv or into Jerusalem, it would kill 3 million people. And according to the Iranians, that would be the end of Israel. Israel would then retaliate and kill 10 million people. No, they wouldn't, but that's the thinking. And the Iranians say it's worth it because there are 1 billion Muslims and there are only a few million Jews. And so that would mean the end of Judaism, the end of the nation state of the Jewish people, etc. That's the apocalyptic approach being taken by Iran. You can't allow countries like that to have nuclear weapons and have their nuclear program contained. Containment is off the table. Prevention is on the table. There has to be prevention. So I'm hoping that the administration will agree that unless Iran itself dismantles its entire nuclear program, and now we hear the vice president saying, well, maybe they have the right to have civilian nuclear. Well, the relationship between civilian and military is a matter of degree, and you can turn civilian nuclear programs into military programs pretty quickly. So the Israeli position, I think it's the right position, is Iran can't have any nuclear programs, can't have civilian nuclear. But first of all, they don't need it. It's a hot place. You don't need to heat Tehran with nuclear energy. There's plenty of oil, plenty of gas. You can use that. So their nuclear civilian program is just a cover for their nuclear military program. And unless the United States recognizes that, there's going to be a conflict between Israel and the United States. Israel is not going to accept an Iranian nuclear weapons buildup. Even if the United States would accept it, Begin said no to Reagan. Olmert said no to Bush. They both said, look, we are the leaders of a sovereign country, Israel, and we decide what's in Israel's best interest. You might not want to help. For example, when Israel destroyed the Osiris nuclear reactor, which was building a bomb for Iraq, the United States condemned it, as did the Security Council. And then a few years later, they praised Israel for destroying Iraq's nuclear reactor because they went into Iraq, and if they had gone into Iraq and Iraq had, in fact, nuclear arsenal, a lot of Americans would have suffered greatly. So they thanked Israel for doing it, and I think the world would thank Israel and the United States if they, either together or separately, prevented Iran from developing nuclear weapons. So my meeting with the hostages, it was very, very sad. These are people, some of whom don't know whether their loved ones are alive or dead. Some of them know that their loved ones are dead, and they just want to retrieve the bodies so that they can be buried in accordance to a Jewish tradition. And some of them are hoping that their loved ones are alive. And they're all hoping that if they are alive, they'll remain alive and that there'll be some kind of a deal. Remember, when Hamas exchanges hostages, it demands for every innocent Israeli hostage that Israel give up hundreds, sometimes thousands of guilty murderers, people who have been convicted, legitimately convicted of mass murders, of putting bombs on buses and in cafeterias. So, the trades aren't particularly fair trades, but they have the upper hand if they're holding hostages and if they don't care about human life. So we'll wait and see. Maybe we'll learn something in the next few days. I think the team are leaving for the Middle East with the president early next week. We're told, I think Monday, we're told that this big announcement will come either Monday or Friday or over the weekend. It will certainly be time to get maximum attention, depending on what's in it. And then we'll see if the negotiations occur. One of the places they're going is Doha, and they will be meeting with the Emir of Qatar. I have met with the Emir of Qatar 3 times. I've met with him. I've met with his mother. I've met with his brother. I was twice in Qatar, both times invited by the government, once to give lectures at universities there, and the other just to meet with the Emir and try to persuade the Emir not to oppose the Abraham Accords. And the other time I met with him was when he came and had dinner with President Trump at his hotel in New Jersey, and I was invited. There were only like 6 or 7 of us at the table, and I was one of them, sitting next to the Emir and having an opportunity to talk to him. We talked a little bit about tennis. He is a semi-pro tennis player, apparently a very good tennis player, nice guy, good sense of humor. We exchanged some stories, had a good time together, shared some food. He didn't drink. I did. And President Trump didn't. So I think I was the only one at the table drinking. Come to think of it, the president doesn't drink. I don't think his wife drinks. And the Emir doesn't drink. His brother doesn't drink. So I drank. I had a glass of wine and enjoyed it. But, Muslims don't care if you have wine as long as they don't have wine. So, I have this relationship. The Emir also invited me to attend the World Cup, the soccer cup, as his guest. I didn't go, but one of these days I'll go back, and it's a very nice place to visit. Wonderful restaurants, wonderful other places. We had a lot of fun. We went camel riding and camel racing, and when you're a guest of the Emir, you're treated very, very well in Qatar, and so we were treated very, very well. But the Qataris have been playing both ends against the middle. Obviously, they have negotiations and dealings with Hamas. They have dealings with Israel. I can't condemn that. They are in a position where they can serve as an intermediary. I wish they would be stronger on behalf of Western values, America, Israel. But if they are providing some kind of conciliation, negotiation, and if that will result in the release of hostages who are alive. I commend them for it, even if I disagree with some of their attitudes. So that's my meeting with the hostage families. You can't help but shed a tear when you say goodbye to them. And they gave us all these, obviously, yellow pins, which I've been wearing for years. By the way, the other thing I wear all the time, I don't know if you can see this very well. This was given out in 1917 at the Zionist conference in St. Petersburg. It was during the Russian Revolution. Before the Russian Revolution, you couldn't support Zionism, but once the Russian Revolution occurred, you were able to. And so the World Zionist Conference met in St. Petersburg, and this is the little silver medal they gave everybody there in 1917. It says in Hebrew, "Im eshkachech Yerushalayim," if I ever forget Jerusalem, may my right hand wither. The love of Jerusalem goes back in Judaism since the beginning of time. Every Jew prays toward Jerusalem. Jerusalem, on the other hand, is hardly mentioned in the Quran. It is like the 18th most important city in Islam, and the only reason it's taken on current importance is because the Israelis control it. So the Muslims exaggerate the importance of Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is the central, most important city. It's the Vatican. It's Salt Lake City. It's the most important city in Judaism, as reflected by this 1917. If you went back to 1717, you could probably find similar things. If you go back to 1,000 years before Jesus, you will find remnants of Jewish life in Jerusalem archaeologically. So, you can't imagine Judaism without Jerusalem. And yet many Arabs, including in the Harvard report, say that Jews had nothing to do with Jerusalem. There were never any Jews in Jerusalem. If there were never any Jews in Jerusalem, then Jesus never was in Jerusalem, and then the whole New Testament is false. So whenever Arabs and Muslims deny Jewish presence in Jerusalem, they deny Christianity as well as denying Judaism. And so most anti-Semites are also anti-Christians. And so that's an anti-American. So that's an important thing to remember. Okay, let's turn to letters, a lot of them about universities. There are approximately 19,000 employees of Harvard. I'm taking these figures as given. I don't know if I've never checked them myself. Approximately 19,000 employees at Harvard, and there are 30,000 students. That means that the employee-student ratio is 1.58 students to every employee. This is an insane level of waste. I agree with you that the important ratio is faculty to students. And, Harvard when I was there, had a pretty good ratio of faculty to students. The classes were large. My classes in criminal law, 150. My class on thinking about thinking had 1,000 students. But we also had seminars, and I taught a course on Shakespeare in the law. It had 12 students. I actually taught a course on the law of baseball. It had like 10, 12 students, but most classes were quite large. But the number of employees, administrators, bureaucrats now at places like Harvard and Yale are obscene. And they don't help with the education of students. It's faculty that help with the education of students. It's the bureaucrats that are the radicalizing influence. And I bet you that among the people who are wearing masks today at Columbia are administrators, are junior faculty, people without tenure who are part of the problem of radicalization at universities. I was wondering if you knew Robert Bork when he was at Yale, and the answer is yes. Bob and I had our differences. I disagreed with him when he was the one who fired, who fired the people at the Saturday Night Massacre. But I thought he was extraordinarily well qualified intellectually to be on the Supreme Court. How did Harvard University get to a point where remedial math is offered? I wondered that myself. It used to be one had to have perfect and near perfect math scores to gain admittance to most prestigious universities. it's true. Harvard admits students today who have to take remedial arithmetic, remedial math, remedial other kinds of subjects because Harvard's admissions today are based on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which means, and people deny this, but it's absolutely true. Unqualified students are admitted to Harvard. And the way to cover that up is you don't have grades. Or if you have grades, you grade not blindly, so you can grade based on race as well. But we have no check on whether or not the admissions process at Harvard is working because we don't evaluate our students. Today, grade inflation. When I was a student, C was the average grade. If for every B there was a D, for every A there was an F. C was the average grade. Today, there are no Cs. B plus is probably the average grade, and virtually everybody gets A's. And how do you evaluate your admissions process if you have so distorted the evaluation process that that everybody you admitted was a genius because they get all A's? It just doesn't work. Okay, I made an arithmetic error. Talking about arithmetic, I needed a little remedial arithmetic. I talked about 20% at $50 billion and saying it was $1 billion. No, it's $10 billion. So sorry, I underestimated it by a lot. I never thought I would live to see the day when Harvard is equated with Southern universities in the 1950s, racist, discriminatory, and teaching nothing of any value. No, they're not equated. I think in many respects today, Harvard is worse than some of the Southern universities. Today, Southern universities are doing very, very well. A lot of the Southern universities, my wife went to Emory, great college. Friends of mine have kids who go to Vanderbilt and WashU in St. Louis, not quite Southern, but it's on the border. So I think we're seeing a diminution in scholarship quality, academic standards at places like Harvard. At the same time, we're seeing a major improvement in academic standards at some of the Southern universities. The end result may be good. It may be a sense of leveling of universities so that we don't get this special, oh my God, you're an Ivy Leaguer, you must be brilliant. First of all, it's never been true. You can be an Ivy Leaguer and not be a brilliant student. But second of all, I think it's good to have a little bit of leveling so that students all over the country who get a good education can have an education equivalent to Ivy Leagues. Okay, here's not a question, but a good point. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. I think that's a phrase that was coined by Justice Jackson. I know Justice Goldberg, for whom I clerked, used it in one of his opinions, and it's true. And I think Thomas Jefferson, without using that term, used the logic as well that you have to interpret the Constitution in a way that makes sure it permits the survival of our country. Final question. Abraham Lincoln got away with suspending habeas corpus. Why not Trump? No. Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the middle of the worst war the United States ever fought, with the highest number of casualties. He suspended it only briefly, and the Supreme Court didn't allow the suspension to permit the execution of a person. And once the Civil War was over, the writ of habeas corpus came back. So no, I don't think you can suspend the writ of habeas corpus. There is no war going on today, and I don't think what is going on would justify in any way. No, let's not suspend any provisions of the Constitution. Let's make sure that everybody in government, the president, congressmen, senators, justices, all comply, not only with the letter, but the spirit of the Constitution. It's a great document. It's done us well for well over 200 years. Let's hope it does us well for at least another 200 years. So long live the Constitution. See you next week.